Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the What I Do Believe podcast. This is a show where we talk post-deconstruction faith and how to move forward, focusing on faith, hope, and love and freedom, not anger, fear, criticism, rage, frustration. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So today's episode is called Why I Hate Hot Takes. And I really do, because they're everywhere. And it's not just one group of people posting them, it's across the board. You've got a lot of obvious bad actors, of course, in politics and culture wars, conservative and fundamentalist Christians, pop deconstructionists, angry atheists. Everyone's got a hot take, and they're firing them off constantly. But what really gets me is that it's not just those people, those groups. It's even people I respect. People who normally carry themselves with wisdom, with patience, with a voice of peace. People who, when they write long form in blogs or articles or books or sit down for a conversation, they actually have something really kind and peaceful and meaningful to say and helpful. But then I even see them get sucked into the machine, firing off hot takes on Twitter, on Threads, Facebook, Instagram captions, Substack notes and stuff like that. So they're firing off their short, quick hot takes all over the place on those platforms. And it's basically because all the short form spaces are where quick outrage and snappy one-liners travel faster, get more engagement, and that's just the way the algorithm works. So it's definitely frustrating and disappointing, because I think hot takes have become like a microcosm of the larger problem in our culture right now, where we'd rather be quick than careful. We'd rather be loud than thoughtful, reactive than, reflective. And the sad part is, we keep engaging in this way, and I think we all know it doesn't work. Hot takes really don't help. They don't build understanding. They don't invite anyone in. They just pile more noise on to the noise. And I know this not just because I see it everywhere, but because I've done it myself, and that's largely what I want to talk about today. This episode builds off my Substack post from this past week, so you can go and read that if you would like to. But there I wrote about this idea of calling people in instead of calling them out. And I want to build on that today, not by repeating myself too much. This isn't just the audio form of that blog post, but by sharing some of my own story in a little more detail and how I've seen this play out in real life. So, like I said, we live in a world, the digital landscape, that thrives off of hot takes, and maybe that shapes how we engage in real life too. I think it kind of does. But, especially online, social media rewards outrage. It rewards quick judgments and callouts. The algorithm loves that stuff. The louder, the harsher, the funnier, the more witty, more controversial maybe, the more attention it gets, despite whether or not the outcome is, or the result is a helpful one. And like I said, I know this because I have been there. Back in 2020, I'm sitting at home just stewing all day long. I was angry. I was seeing injustice everywhere, in politics, in church culture, society. And I was at a place where I didn't know what to do with all of that rage that was just constantly building up within me. And so I did what probably, everybody is still doing. I started firing off hot takes online all the time, just posting on Facebook primarily, arguing in comment sections, reposting, controversial or, attention-grabbing hot takes, and just really calling people out constantly and telling people how wrong they were. And at the time, I told myself I had really good motives for that. I told myself I was doing it for justice, for truth, for the greater good, all that stuff that maybe we tell ourselves. But the reality was I was just really angry, and I wasn't helping anyone think differently. I wasn't trying to invite people into a conversation. I was just spilling my anger out onto everyone around me. And it felt really good for a moment. There's something strangely satisfying about telling people how stupid or wrong I think they are. but it actually doesn't do any good. It just keeps us stuck in cycles of rage and pain and loneliness. But really kind of the turning point in this for me, this is a short version of the story, but one of the turning points in this for me is that one day, maybe after a particularly heated public conversation from one of my hot takes online, or, getting really into the thick of it in the comment section with somebody, my wife, Kayla, we were probably taking a walk in our neighborhood, and she looked at me and just asked a really simple question. She said, "Do you actually want people to listen to what you're saying?" Which, amazing question. Do you actually want people to listen to what you're saying? Because if you do, she said, this isn't the way to go about it. You're going to lose your voice. You're going to lose your voice with people who maybe you have had it or do still have it, but you're going to lose it with them. And that's really stuck with me ever since, because I think she was right. Really what she said challenged my intentions and helped me notice that despite what I said my intentions are, that actually wasn't what they were. I wasn't trying to help people see differently. I wasn't trying to create understanding. To be honest, I was really just trying to piss people off. I was pissed off, and I didn't want to be miserable alone, despite the fact that everybody else was already pissed off too. So I was just trying to piss people off because I was pissed off. And I was really addicted to the anger, to the fight, and to the release that came from dumping it out onto somebody else. And so her question really forced me to step back and ask, why am I really doing this? What am I actually accomplishing? And I've really tried hard not to do that ever since. But now, a few years later, I see the same thing continuing to happen in the deconstruction world online, of course, in politics. There are countless creators and platforms that are basically just hot take machines. Some are angry, some are sarcastic, some, claim to be educational, some are funny. And yeah, a lot of these platforms do offer value. I'm not completely condemning them. And don't get me wrong, I love a good meme about how messed up church culture can be. I think humor is one of the ways we process pain and move forward and survive. But I think at the same time, so many of these accounts and these creators and these people, just constantly talking into these spaces and have huge followings. I think a lot of times from my perspective, they just really crossed the line into just being a bully platform. Because day after day, really all they're doing is just making fun of people. They're dunking on Christians, they're mocking leaders, they're just constantly criticizing people who see things differently. And I get it. You can say that you're against bullying or against being hateful or judgmental unless you feel like the people who are the butt of the joke deserve it. And I totally understand that. I'm definitely more sympathetic to some bullies than others, because if the butt of the joke is somebody who deserves it, it feels very justified. If you've been hurt or traumatized by the church, if you've experienced spiritual abuse, if your life has been damaged by harmful theology, harmful church culture, it makes sense that you would want to flip the script and find a lot of joy or, entertainment or value in people turning it around on them. But bullying the bullies, I think, really isn't the healing that we're longing for. At least it doesn't result in the long-form healing that we want, and it's not the way forward. I know this because I've done it, like I said. So, here's the problem. Calling people out might feel powerful, and it definitely does when you're doing it. But I really think it's usually not about healing or being a part of solutions. It's really just about distancing ourselves. We want everyone to know I'm not like them. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not that kind of Christian. I'm not a Christian. I'm not one of those people. I'm a good person. I'm one of the good ones, But all that really does is make whatever we're talking about us instead of, about maybe the people it's really about. I know that me railing against racism in 2020 It wasn't me really caring about systemic racism and how that was on display. It was about making it about me. It really was. I was making it all about myself, rather than doing the slow, humbling work of repentance and healing and understanding and change and trying to draw other people into those similar things. So it's really just building an audience on anger and rage and division rather than solutions and healing and moving forward. And, while maybe there is a time and place to just really focus on problems, and maybe you can find community in other people who have been harmed in the same way, maybe similar to like the Me Too movement or something like that. There's a time and place to gather around shared experiences and shared thoughts about the things that are wrong. If that's the only thing you do and you just keep living in that place, it does way more harm than good. More yelling past each other, more cycles of outrage where nobody is actually listening. If your real motivation is to build community and help people consider differing perspectives or move towards healing or move towards peace, then call outs just by themselves are not going to get you there. And I really do think we have to learn how to stop calling people out and start calling people in. So what does this mean, calling people in? It could mean a lot of different things, but the way I understand it right now, I think calling people in means creating belonging before believing. It means acceptance before rethinking. It means, just welcoming people regardless of what they think and whether they agree with you or not, yet, or whether or not they ever will. Because I think we all know, like, nobody's ever really changed their mind because they lost an argument, right? Especially when it comes to religion. Like, I don't think everyone has ever decided to believe in God when they didn't before because they lost an argument or because somebody yelled at them. And probably vice versa, People don't change when you shout at them. People don't open up when they feel mocked or condemned or made to feel stupid or wrong or evil. I really do think, and this is a line, I wish I remember where I heard it, but I've repeated it time and time again, and I believe it's true. People listen to people who have listened to them. People listen to people who have listened to them. And that's why so much of our cultural conversation feels stuck, I think. We're all yelling at each other, but nobody is listening. Nobody's listening. And I think, one of the ways we get stuck in this is we cite sources for why we're doing the things we're doing, and we think that we cite the prophets or we cite Jesus as, speaking truth to power, and we say we're just doing what we see them doing. And there's an element to that that's probably true, but I think when people point to Jesus or the prophets as justification for just constant call-out culture and critique, I think we're missing something. Yes, absolutely. Do not hear me saying otherwise. Jesus had harsh words for the religious and political elite of his day. And you know what? It got him killed. It did. But his main strategy, I don't think, was going around and just constantly calling people out. I see his main strategy as calling people in. He healed, he forgave, he welcomed, he ate with people. He drew a diversity of different kinds of people to his table, to his crowds, to his movements, to his inner circles. I mean, you had people in the same group who previously hated each other, who completely opposing ideologies. You had zealots and tax collectors, a part of the same group. You had Pharisees and Roman soldiers, and not just, one particular people group. You had all kinds of different groups of people drawn to Jesus in community. And I think that's because his main strategy wasn't calling people out, it was calling people into a community of love and forgiveness and acceptance and understanding and all of those things. And yes, he did call people out to the extent that he had harsh critiques, and those critiques did get him killed. But I think the only reason the critiques were powerful enough to warrant his execution, that they carried the weight, was because that he had already built an audience of people who were listening, and those were people who he had called in. The belonging came first. The acceptance came first. And that's what, made the harsher words stick, I think, because he had created this large, following of people, the criticisms had an audience, and that's what made them threatening. But that audience came from calling people in, not calling people out. So I really think this is true, not just from what I see in the scriptures and, other ways, but just in my own personal experience. If I look back at my own journey, the thing that has changed me the most, and the thing that is the reason for why I see things the way I do now, it hasn't been arguments, it's not been books or debates or Bible verses, it's been relationships. It's been, developing and enjoying friendships with people who don't see things the way that I do, but still treat me with respect, and conversations where I listened as much as I talked. Those experiences have shifted my perspectives in ways that I can't always explain, ways that I can't prove or cite with a Bible verse. And honestly, they have caused me to have a change in perspectives that I have not seen coming. And that if you told me years ago that, 5 years from now or a couple months from now even, this is the way you're going to see things, I'd be like, there's no way. How could I possibly come to that way of seeing things? Well, the answer is relationship. That's really it. It's not losing an argument. It wasn't, reading something that really changed my perspective. I really do think what changes people is relationships, belonging before believing, accepting and being accepted before, you change the way you think about things. And it's through relationships that I really have learned to see the divine spark in every person, people who I disagree with, people who I think are wrong. Still seeing the divine spark in them, which inspires me to, I definitely want to share what I believe with them, but also recognizing that in order for that conversation to be fruitful, I need to be willing to listen to what they have to say too. So I really do think this is the choice that's before us. If you want to stay the same, and you want to stay closed off, and you want to stay angry, and you really want to make sure that nobody is ever going to listen to you, and that no one's ever really going to hear you, keep calling people out. Keep firing off hot takes, keep shouting past people without really ever listening. But what I've experienced is if you want peace, and you want healing, and you want freedom, and you actually do want people to listen to you, and you want to help people see things differently, then start calling people in. Stop calling people out and start calling people in. Share your perspective with humility, not certainty, but with humility, with love and kindness. But first, you have to be willing to listen. So listen first, then speak, because other people listen to people who have first listened to them. And I know that you know this because you probably know, if you stop and think about it, that you listen to people who you feel like have listened to you. Because we have to accept people before we can expect them to hear us, just like we need to feel accepted before we'll ever listen to others. That, I think, is the way forward. So thanks for listening to this week's episode of the What I Do Believe podcast. Time for the shameless plugs. If you like this show, please share it with other people. Please go to the podcast player that you're listening to this through and leave it a 5-star review. It helps people see it and see that it's something worth listening to. There's a companion newsletter that goes with this. It is on Substack. It's also called the same thing, What I Do Believe. You can go to Substack and search that and find it and subscribe, and you will have new updates delivered straight to your email inbox every single Thursday morning. This podcast goes live every single Monday. That is the schedule I'm trying to keep to. So far, so good. Of course, life happens. Sometimes I might be a little bit off with that. But in general, that's the schedule. So that's what you can expect. Thank you for listening. Whether you listen to the podcast and read the newsletter or just engage with one or the other, you are appreciated. And I really, really am grateful for you that you give me your time and attention, which I do think are the most valuable things that you have. So the fact that you give me a little bit of your time and attention every single week It means a lot to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, both the podcast and the Substack can be found at the website, whatidobelieve.com. Find more information on this project, what I'm trying to do, and of course, find episode backlog and Substack backlog there. And I wrote a book this past year, came out in January, called Deconstruct with Jesus. Talks about my deconstruction journey and faith journey over the past 10 years. If you're interested, you can definitely get that on Amazon. And I love that people have read it and would love more people to read it, because that is why I wrote the book, so that people would read it. So if you like that book, I appreciate you liking it and engaging with it. And please leave it a review on Amazon. That definitely does the same thing. Helps people find it and see that it's something worth reading. Feel free to order copies and, give it to other people if you think it would help someone. That's the goal, trying to add value, trying to be helpful. And once again, thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. I appreciate you. Have a good week. See you next time. Goodbye.